Brenner's ecological theory. So, Bronfenbrenner's came up with a simple yet useful paradigm showing the different factors that exert influence on the individual's development. It points out the ever-widening spheres of influence that shapes every individual's, from his or her immediate family to a neighborhood or a country or even in the world. So, Bronfenbrenner also known as bioecological system theory, represents a child's development within the context of relationship system that comprise the child's environment. It describes multipart layers of environment that has an effect on the development of the child. Each layer is further made up of different structures. The term bioecological points out that a child's own biological makeup impacts as a key factor in one's development. So, through the child's growing and developing body and in interplay between his or her immediate family or community, so, and the societal landscape fuels and steers his development. So, changes or conflict in any one layer will ripple through other layers. So, to study a child's development, then we must look not only um, at a child and her immediate environment, but also at the interaction of the larger environment as well. So, Bronfenbrenner's conceptualized four ecological systems that an individual interacted with, each nested within the list other. It's listed from closest to person to furthest. We have macrosystem, exosystem, mesosystem, microsystem. So we have microsystem. The prefix micro comes from the Greek word for small, and it is the first most intermediate layer of the nested system. It encompasses an individual's human relationship, interpersonal interaction, and immediate surrounding. An example of this system would be the relationship between individuals in his or her parents, siblings, or school environment. So, dito sa microsystem, uh, it comprises structures with the child directly interacts with. So, syempre, it includes yung structures such as one's family, schools, and neighborhood. As such, the microsystem covers the most basic relationship and interaction that a child has in his or her intermediate environment. So, dito, does the child have a strong and nurturing relationship with the parents and family? So, are his or her needs met? Like that. So, this means that the child is affected by people with whom he interacts and turns these people also affected by the child. For example, a mother's deep affection for her child move her to answer the baby's needs to keep her baby safe. In turn, the baby's smiles and coos brings the mother's feeling of warmth and affirmation that indeed she is a good mother. So, dito sa microsystem level, the child is most affected by this bidirectional influence and the interactions at outer layers still. Next, we have the mesosystem, the second layer from the individual, surrounding the microsystem and encompasses the different interactions between the characters of the microsystem. For example, the relationship between the individual's family and their schools, teachers, or administrators. In order for an interaction to be considered part of the mesosystem, it has to be a direct interaction between two aspects of the microsystem that influence the development of the individual. So dito, yung layer na to is nagsiserve as the connection between the structure of the child's microsystem. So just like another example, so the mesosystem will include the link or interaction between the parents and teachers or the parents and health services of the community or the church. Next, we have the exosystem. So the exosystem is the third The exosystem layer refers to the bigger social system in which the child does not function directly. This includes the city, government, the workplace, and the mass media. So, the structure in this layer may influence the child's development by somehow affecting some structures in the child's microsystem. So, this includes the circumstances of the parents' work life, the location or the schedule. So, we see a change in children's routine when, for example, the mothers work in a call center. So, yung layer na 'to, yung third layer na 'to is meron siyang elements of the microsystem which do not affect an individual directly, but may do so indirectly. Yun nga, for example, yung call center yung mother niya. If a parent were to lose their job or have their hours cut back, they would affect their children indirectly, such as financial strain or increase of parental stress. So that was seen in the Burger King commercial. So the child may not interact directly with what is the ecosystem, but he is likely to feel the positive or negative impact um, of this system that can create as it interacts with the child's own system. So next, let's move to macrosystem. So macrosystem comes from the word macro comes from the Greek word large, and it's used because this system was thought to be all encompassing. The fourth and outmost layer of the bioecological model, it encompasses cultural and societal belief and programming that influence an individual's development. So dito, yung layer na to is found in the outermost part of the child's environment. So, the macro system includes cultural values and customs or mga laws. So, the belief system contains one's macro system in all in the interaction in the other layers and reaches an individual. So, for example, is uh, yung gender norms or religious influence. Next is, for example, in Western countries like US, most of the young people are expected to be more independent by the time they end their teenage years. While sa mga Asian countries, parents are expected to support or at least want to support their children for a longer period of time. So it is not uncommon to see even a married children is still living in the parents. Diba dito sa Philippines, for example, dito sa atin, kahit na may asawa na yung anak ng parents natin, for example, yung anak niya is may asawa na or kaya kahit may anak na yung anak niya, is minsan nakikitira pa rin sila dun sa bahay ng parents nila. So, because of the difference in belief and customs, children from different parts of the world experience different child rearing practices and therefore differences in development. So, next we have the chronosystem. So, chronosystem covers the element of time as it relates to a child's environment. This involves pattern of stability and change in child's life. So this evolves whether the child's day is characterized by an ordinarily predictable pattern or whether the child is subjected to a sudden changes in routine. So we can also look into the pace of child's everyday life. So this system can affect or influence the child externally, like the timing of other siblings coming or the timing of parental separation or even death. So effect can also be internal, like the bodily changes that occurs within the developing child, like the timing of menstrual onset for girls, yung menstruation ng girls. As the children gets older, they may react differently from the environment changes. So the children may have also acquired the ability to cope and decide to what extent they will allow changes around them to affect them. So here at Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory, it is no longer nature versus nurture, but it is nurturing the nature. So the ecological system theory focuses on the quality and context of the child's environment. Bronfenbrenners pointed out that as a child develops, the interplay within the layers of environment system becomes more structured, also grows and and complex. So this dynamic interaction of the system happens at the meantime, while the child's physical and cognitive structures also grows and mature. So this bioecological theory helps us to determine how the different circumstances or conditions in a relationship in the world affect the child as he or she goes through the more or else predictable sequence of natural growth. So for decades, so there was a long drawn debate on which had more impact on child's development. So nature or nurture. So another way of putting it is the heredity or the environment that influence a child's development. More and more research. So development theories now stress on the role played by the catch and the extent to which they interact in ongoing development. So before I end my discussion, I want to ask you, uh, can you enumerate Bronfenbrenner's conceptualized for ecological system? Anyone? Yes, Mr. Mamaril.
Yes, sir.
Ano, the microsystem, mesosystem, the exosystem, macrosystem, tapos chronosystem.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question. That ends my discussion. I'm going to pass the floor.